One of the greatest comedians who ever lived, John Belushi, is memorialized in a new documentary called Belushi. Welcome to the Film Threat Podcast. I am Chris Gore, and I am a huge fan of John Belushi. I grew up watching him on Saturday Night Live. Yes, I was around when Saturday Night Live was in its beginnings, and was fortunate to be able to stay up as a little kid and watch John Belushi and watch him grow into this incredible talent, everything from Animal House to the Blues Brothers. And his life was cut too short. This amazing documentary is directed by R.J. Cutler, who joins us on the Film Threat Podcast today. R.J., how you doing today?
Yeah, we're good. Thank you so much. I was a little kid staying up late watching John Belushi too. I was a teenager. I think I was 14 when Saturday Night Live premiered, but I was there with you, man.
Man, it was just seeing him, he's one of those comedians where you never know what's going to happen. And Animal House made him a star. I mean, he's not the lead in that film, but that blew him up beyond. So it's great that you knew him in his very beginnings, at least his career.
I go back to National Lampoon Radio Hour with John. I think I was maybe 12, and somehow my folks let me subscribe to the National Lampoon. And from that, I discovered the Radio Hour. And from that, I discovered John Belushi and his work. And of course, his vision, because he was the writer director of the Radio Hour. And what a cast they had there, everybody from Harold Ramis to Gilda Radner to Bill Murray and to Brian Doyle Murray and beyond.
Well, what you've done with this documentary is really explain to people now why he was such an important figure in comedy and how innovative he was. I didn't realize, just from watching your documentary, his personal story, his personal life. It was just incredible to see these moments and the way your approach for this doc. Sorry if I'm rambling a bit, but I spoke to Alex Winter recently about his Zappa documentary, and I'm sure you're familiar with Montage of Heck by Brett Morgan. These documentaries that cull together an archive into a life story just seem so difficult to approach. Like, how did you even begin to sift through all the materials that were available?
Well, you got to start with a vision. You have to just have a sense of what you want. And in the case of John, I wanted a film that reflected the man. I wanted a film that was rich and dense and complicated and raw and thick with stuff and provocative and energetic and propulsive. And those were the things we talked about. You also, in every film you do, you have a set of riddles that are presented, limitations. How do you tell the story of someone who died 40 years ago? How do you make that immediate, as raw as the man himself, as present as the man himself? And then how do you do that with such limitations on your footage? Because John is a deeply private man, and social media and video phones don't exist. So there isn't a vast archive of personal footage. There's a great limitation. How do you do all of that? And then I work. I'm blessed, as I'm sure Alex is, as I know Brett is, with brilliant collaborators. And so I work with the best researchers who can help me find material. I work with the best editors who are putting it together. Ryan Gallagher and Austin Wilkins did the research on this film. Joe Beshanovsky and Maris Berzins did the editing. If you're fortunate. And this is tip of the iceberg of the collaborators, Robert Valley, who did the animation, Stefan Nadelman, who did the graphics. If you're fortunate, you put together a great team, and then you are able to get to the place where you want to go with all of that. And then, as it has been said, sometimes and then sometimes a little luck, you know. And Judy Belushi invites you to Martha's Vineyard, and you say to her, "What's in that box?" And she says, "Oh, that's the oral history tapes." What?
Right.
And
Wow.
then suddenly that problem gets addressed. Or did John ever send you any letters? His whole life. What do you mean his whole life? Well, here are the letters he sent me. You know, he wrote her letters from the day they met until pretty much the day he died. So, you know, that's how you do it.
Well, I'm told you had 50 hours of audio, and I will say, I love this approach. You use, you know, video footage we've never seen of John Belushi, footage from his films and career, you know, woven into photographs. And I love the animation style, the animator that you chose.
Robert Valley, yeah, brilliant.
Wow.
Oscar nominee, outlaw animator. That guy is just the greatest. And he captured John's spirit in his work. And he also early on sent me a frame of young John, the 4-year-old boy who would wander the neighborhood knocking on doors. And if you answered the door, you got a performance in your living room. And you howled with laughter because the kid was so brilliant. And the moment I saw that young John animation, I knew that that little boy would appear throughout the film. And in fact, one of the final images we see of John is that little boy in the Chateau Marmont.
Yeah, that animation just really struck me as adding so much to it, because just that he had almost like a childlike innocence with his approach to comedy, which was just so striking. I guess, you know, the thing that strikes me also is that the daunting task that you have in taking letters, photos, all the video that's available, this archive that Judy Belushi provided. What's your entry point, and how do you map out someone's life like that with, you know, with just so much in front of you?
It's funny because it's like asking, you know, I don't know. But it's not that I don't know, because I do it a lot.
Right.
But you know, you tend to, it ain't easy to for anybody who's creating something to stare at the blank, whatever that blank is, the blank page, the blank canvas, and in our case, the blank timeline on the Avid. And so you start with you know, principles of your vision. As I say, density was a big thing. One of the very first things we did was ask Judy for a list of all the music that John listened to at various times of his life. She met him when she was 15, 14 years old. He was 16, 17 years old. So from 17 to 33, what music did he love? He was a man who loved his music. If you can remember songs, tell us. If you can remember artists, tell us. Then we started building sequences around full songs. There was a point when the movie was, you know, almost twice as long as it is now, because every section was a full song, a full music. It would begin, it would have a middle, it would have an end. And you were constantly going up and down through the portions of his life. And there were many complete songs in it. Now there are bits and pieces of those very songs, but they are, by and large, the needle drop music in the film is music that John listened to at different points in his life. Then you work with what you have. So with the graphics, we were limited to what we had access to, but again, Stefan Nadelman brought that material so beautifully to life. Then there are holes, and you're left with that question: how do you fill the hole? That's when I decided to work with animation and looked at a lot of different animators' work, but it was Robert whose work was clearly the way for me to go with this. And on from there.
Well, I love the idea that you used the music that he loved in a way, kind of a playlist before playlists were a thing, or I guess mixtapes existed back then. But
Yeah, we basically started with a mixtape version of the film.
well, in a way, with all this archival material, you're kind of panning for gold. Not like either of us ever actually pan for gold, but I mean, there are so many moments that
That's what I do.
it is what you do. I mean, it's one of the amazing things is I did not realize that Carrie Fisher and Dan Aykroyd had a relationship, and hearing them talk about that was amazing.
Nor did you likely realize, I certainly didn't, that perhaps the only person in John's life who really understood the burdens of his drug addiction was Carrie Fisher, and that they would stay up nights talking about it, and that she could so counterintuitively understand that, as she says in the film, that addiction isn't the problem, sobriety is the problem, especially if you don't have the tools to kind of confront the causes of your addiction. And during periods of sobriety, you're left without the tools to understand what the root causes of the disease you're battling is.
Yeah, I thought Carrie Fisher's inclusion in the doc was amazing. The way that you utilized her as also a way to discuss the addiction, which is a thread throughout the film, and something and Judy talking about that through their letters, their back and forth letters, that was so touching. There must have been a point where you have to think to yourself, well, I got to focus on certain things. What are the things that you were not able to include that maybe you regret or think, it's just, it's got to be a movie. It's got to only be this long. So,
yeah, it's a great question. I think every movie kind of tells you how long it wants to be. We documentary filmmakers like to say a movie should be about 89 minutes long. It should be just as close to 90 minutes without going over as you want. But the more I do this, the more I realize it's not really, it's a good starting point, sure. But some films want to be nice and long. Some films want to be, this film's an hour 47. Some films want to be 2 hours, 2:20, 2:30. Some films want to be nice and tight and short. Some films, you got to really, on some level, you got to let the film tell you what it wants to be. And there isn't anything I left out of this film. If you told me I had a bay and editors and all our raw material and another month to do whatever I wanted with this film, I'd take the month off and encourage you to offer it to someone who needs it. This is. This film really ended up exactly where we wanted it, time-wise and formally, and in terms of all the elements that are included in it. Another part of the density that we haven't identified or discussed are the interviews I conducted with Judy. The only person I interviewed contemporaneously was Judy Belushi, and God bless her, she was so generous with her time, because we sat 3 times over the 2+ years that we were making the film. And, it's not easy stuff for her to get into. And some of it's a lot of fun, but it is a long time ago, and a lot of it's very painful. And some days, we'd finish early and just go out and, grab some pizza and beers, because that was the better way to spend the day. But she was very, very, very generous, and really in all ways, trusting us with the archive, giving us final cut, not seeing anything until we were done, and sitting for those interviews. And then, of course, playing the ukulele for me and singing the song that's over the closing credits.
Wow. Do you have any, just because you spent so much time, I guess, inside the mind of John Belushi, in a sense, do you have any speculation about where his career might have gone had he not met a tragic end? I know that Dan Aykroyd, he was supposed to be in Ghostbusters, and he just would have probably worked with the SNL group and I know, who knows, there might have been more Blues Brothers movies. Do you have any speculation or thoughts about that?
I don't. What I do know is that this was a man who spent his life challenging himself in his work, breaking new ground, tearing down barriers. He was a guy who really, with the Blues Brothers, basically invented performance art, and certainly embraced it a full decade before it was a thing. I suspect he would have continued to challenge himself to do new things, to break new ground, to become even more fully the complete artist that he was. His work was never limited to genre, to form, to content, to the role he played in it, from writer, director to producer to performer. He was a complete artist and a pure artist and a great performer. And the tragedy is we'll never know the answer to the very question you're asking.
Well, the documentary is fantastic. It brought me back to a time when I used to try to stay up to be able to watch SNL. I'm glad that you were doing the same at the time. I want to thank our sponsor, Storyblocks. Go to storyblocks.com/filmthread. All sorts of tools for filmmakers, especially documentary filmmakers. R.J. Cutler, thank you so much just for your amazing work. I can't wait to see what you have coming up next. Thanks again.
Thank you, friend. It's great to chat.
All right, take care.